On August 23, 1939, ideological enemies, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact guaranteed that the two countries agreed not to take any military action against each other for the next 10 years, in addition to a secret clause that included the partition of Eastern Europe. 10 years? Yeah. Would this last? Of course not. Simply 2 years later, on June 22, 1941, Germany, along with their European allies, would launch Operation Barbarossa. German High Command believed that they could defeat the beast in the East in a couple of months, using the same blitzkrieg tactics used against the Poles and the French. As time went on, though, it was clear that the USSR was not France nor Poland. It was something completely different. A misconception that plagues the perception of the Eastern Front is the belief that the USSR and Germany were fighting a war of annihilation and were not considered peace at all. Well, that's not completely true. Several sources point towards there being peace talks between the Soviets and Germans. For the sake of time, I'll use one of these sources from a book called Stalin and the Prospects of a Separate Peace in World War II. I'm going to read some passages from this book to show the peace talks between Germany and the Soviet Union. The Soviet legation in Stockholm was headed by the colorful figure of Alexandra M. Kollontai, the aristocratic daughter of a Tsarist general, a veteran Bolshevik intellectual of nonconformist leanings, and, in her younger days, the prophet and practitioner of unconventional views on love, sex, and family. Another important official in Stockholm was Boris Radzeb, an expert on Finland who is on record for having extended peace feelers from Stockholm to Helsinki in late 1942. Both Semyonov and Radzeb supposedly maintained a very close relationship with Stalin's security chief, Lavrenti P. Beria, who was known as an advocate of partnership with Germany. The German personnel in Stockholm were of equally high caliber, and their selection could be interpreted as a sign of Berlin's interest in a diplomatic settlement of the war. The envoy to Sweden was Hans Thomson, who had last served as charge d'affaires in Washington. In addition to Thomson, in early 1943, Ribbentrop dispatched several respectable diplomats of conservative leaning to other important neutral capitals such as Madrid and Tokyo. The German foreign minister took pride in having achieved the understanding with the Russians in 1939, and, if his post-war late statements are to be trusted, he would have liked to see its renewal in 1943. The propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, was another prominent Nazi favorably disposed to a settlement with Moscow. On November 6, 1942, shortly before the Red Army encircled the Germans to Stalingrad, Stalin declared in a public speech that, quote, "It is not our aim to destroy all organized military force in Germany. For every literate person will understand that this is not only impossible, but also inexpedient from the point of view of the victor." Stalin had already, on February 23, 1942, publicly refused to, quote, "identify Hitler's clique with the German people," suggesting that Hitler's come and go, but the German people and the German state remains. But now he was more specific than ever before in offering friendship to the German military, the caste from which had been recruited so many prominent Russophiles in the past. In the latter part of April, a Swede with connections at the Russian legation was said to have arranged a meeting of diplomats at a country estate about 30 kilometers outside of Stockholm. The participants included 3 unnamed German officials and, from the Soviet side, Mikhail Nikitin, Alexei Talevin, and Boris Yeltsin. At one time, the respected ministers, Thomson and Kollontai, were said to have joined the discussions, which lasted for several days but did not lead to an agreement. The Germans were supposedly ready to make peace in return for a satellite Ukraine and for economic concessions in other parts of the Soviet Union, whereas the Russians insisted upon the frontier of 1941. The Russian participants reportedly broke off negotiations in Sweden at the beginning of May. In his order of the day on May 1st, Stalin had publicly assumed a position on the subject of a separate peace. He attributed the desire for a separate peace to the Nazis, who, quote, judged their adversaries by their own standards of treachery. He also affirmed that only unconditional surrender of the enemy could end the war, although he did not relate this demand to the Casablanca statement by Roosevelt and Churchill. Stalin's strong language suggests that he may have given up any hope of persuading the obstinate Nazis that a compromise was not only in his interest, but, needless to say, also in theirs. This is an interesting thing to consider when talking about the war on the Eastern Front. Although both the Soviet Union and Germany were ideological enemies and had inflicted a lot of damage to each other, especially to the Russians, they were so open to the prospect of peace, a temporary peace if we're being honest. My hope for this video is to convince you, the viewer, that the views we hold for both Germany and the USSR are not entirely accurate. The belief that the USSR would fight to the last man, or that the Germans would not stop their invasion until they reached the Ural Mountains, both sides attending peace talks in Stockholm show that these beliefs are not completely based in reality. Now, do I believe that if there was a peace between the Germans and the Soviets that it would last? No. I don't believe that the peace agreement will last. At best, I believe that this would be a lunch break for both powers to rest until they fight each other. Well, at least for the Russians, considering that Germany was still fighting the Allies. Well, that's it for this video. The link to the book I reference is in the description below. Please check my BitChute channel or YouTube channel, depending on where you are watching this from. If you have any questions or recommendations for the future, please feel free to comment below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the other world. Goodbye.